All right, welcome everyone to the March 2024 Collaboration Cafe webinar, which is sponsored by the Midwest Big Data Innovation Hub with support from the National Science Foundation. I'm John MacMullen, Executive Director of the Hub, and today we'll be exploring a program from NSF that's focused on engaging community stakeholders in research that benefits local communities. It's called the Civic Innovation Challenge, or Civic, from the National Science Foundation. And to help us explore this opportunity, we have Dr. Vishal Sharma from NSF with us. He's a program director in the Division of Computer and Network Systems, which is part of the Directorate of Computer and Information Science and Engineering, or CISE. And he has responsibility for this program and others, such as the Smart and Connected Communities program, which is very relevant to folks interested in this one as well. I'll let you know that the slides for today's session will be available on our website after the webinar, along with the recording on our YouTube channel. I'll go ahead and put that link in the chat for folks. And for those who are new to this series, I'll just very quickly mention who we are and what we do. So we are part of a national network of 4 data innovation hubs focused on data science and other research data activities, and we've been funded by NSF since 2015. We're really focused on building communities and collaborations around data science in our respective regions. And so in the Midwest, we have a 12-state region that we serve. But if you're watching this from outside of our area, we encourage you to get in contact with the hub in your region and look for opportunities to get involved in the work that they do as well. This Collaboration Cafe series is designed to help demystify federal funding opportunities, particularly from the core federal agencies involved in funding research and other activities like Civic is, more action-oriented work. And we try to provide a neutral venue for people in the region to meet new people, find new collaborators around the work that they're doing. So if you have questions today, please go ahead and use the Q&A function in Zoom for questions for myself or for our guest. But also feel free to post other comments in the chat if you're looking for partners for this program or other activities, or if you have an idea around this program that you'd like to explore with other people. What I'll do today is just very briefly go through some of the highlights of this program. But I'd really like to spend a significant part of our time today talking with folks who are interested in this upcoming due date for this program and see what other questions you all may have. All right, so this is an active solicitation with a due date for the stage 1 element coming up pretty quickly at the beginning of May. And so those who are interested in this, I'm assuming, have some background already with the solicitation and hopefully are thinking about specifics in the proposal and partners that you want to work with. But we'll talk through some of the basics of that program today. This has been around for a few years now, and so there are some prior awards that have been made across the country. I'll put in the chat a link to some work that my team has done on awards made in the Midwest region. So if you're working in this particular area, that'll give you some examples to look at for what NSF has funded in this space previously. There are some Smart and Connected Communities Awards in there as well. And so, again, there's some similarities between those two programs, but we'll be focused on Civic today. And in particular, we're going to look at the track A of the program, since we have a resilient communities element to the work that we do here in the Midwest. So this is an interesting program for NSF. This is not a typical research grant kind of program. It really is focused on engaging a cross-sector partnership to bring research out into the communities of interest and get them actively involved in participating in research that will benefit those communities directly. There are 2 stages to this program, and so stage 1 is a planning grant phase for up to 6 months and up to $75,000 in funding to support that development work. The second stage is a longer period of 12 months, still very short in terms of execution period, but that is up to $1 million of funding over that period. And only those folks who are awarded in stage 1 are eligible to submit to that stage 2 timeline. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit here. NSF is estimating that they'll make a pretty significant number of awards in both of these stages. So approximately 35 to 40 awards in the planning grant phase, and then up to 15 to 20 in the stage 2 full deployment of that project phase. We have a guest here from CISE today, but there are other directorates at NSF who are supportive of this program. And so we can talk a little about what the focus of those areas is today. But we also have some partnership from the Department of Energy around vehicles and from the Department of Homeland Security as well. And so pretty broad-based support from NSF as well as other agencies for this program. There is no requirement for a letter of intent or a pre-proposal for this program. But as I said, that first due date is coming up pretty quickly. And so you want to be mindful of that moving forward. Vishal, do you want to talk a little about what CISE is interested in terms of this proposal? That tends to be where most of our audience has affiliation with NSF, is through CISE and other sort of computing and data intensive parts of the foundation.
Yeah, so on topic side, we're pretty open about, you may be proposing something on sensing or AI or, bringing new data analytics approaches to, for community benefit. So we're not necessarily prescriptive about any specific area that we're looking for. What we are more keenly interested in is really, looking at, ideas that are still in the lab, but are sort of at that step where they're ready for a real world pilot or a demonstration. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of the argument that you need to make in a good civic proposal, is that, proposal is really doing 2 things. One is there's clear innovation piece, which is work that is solidly grounded in prior research, but not necessarily deployed in a real world environment yet. And then the second is that, you have a real pilot that can be executed in 12 months. So that sort of speaks to the readiness level of the technology itself, that, it shouldn't be an idea that requires something that's more standard in an NSF grant, which would be like 2, 3, 4 years of in-lab development before it's ready for piloting. So it's a program that's much more on the applied side, but we're not prescriptive about any specific size focus area for us. More so, we want to see basic foundational work get applied in a real world setting to address real world challenges.
That's great, thank you. And I think that echoes other programs and other parts of NSF that are past couple of years talking about use-inspired research and actively moving some of that basic research out of the lab into communities and other stakeholder areas where they can have some direct impact. So that's really interesting to see NSF continuing to move in that direction. Okay, so that civic engagement is really critical to this program, as we just heard. And so in my slides here, we won't go through the text of a lot of these slides, but what I'm trying to do is capture some of that information from the solicitation that helps proposers understand the goals of the program, what NSF is looking for, and capture some of the differences of this program versus others that people may be familiar with. And so that idea of really active engagement with civic partners is really important to this program, and NSF gives us some really good guidance in the text here about what that really means in practice, and who those civic partners may be, who you may want to collaborate with, and the idea of a true partnership. And so the idea that you are funding your collaborators to do work with you equally on this project. This is not just a letter of collaboration, but it's actual work with that community directly. So that, I think that's really important. Just a clarifying question, Vishal. This is a very collaborative program, but this is not, PIs are not submitting collaborative proposals in the sense of multiple institutions, right? This is a lead institution with subawards to funded partners. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Great. And so those civic partners that you may have, let's say this is a university that is the lead institution. If you have civic partners, they don't necessarily have to be in SAM or in the NSF system to receive funding. They can receive that as a subawardee and not have to go through all of that additional process that they would have to do as a lead institution.
Yeah, so only the lead institution has to be registered through basically this online systems that you need to be active in to submit through research.gov. And then the sub-awardees are handled through the lead institution. So the lead is responsible for dispersing funds forward.
Got it. Got it. So yeah, the necessary agility for this program in terms of the timeline, that definitely helps there, where you can be that subawardee of an institution that's already set up with the federal government to receive funds in that way. Okay, so we mentioned that this has a couple of different stages: the planning grant phase, which is 6 months, up to 6 months in duration. We have some guidance about what that set of activities looks like in that phase. The thing that I remember from your official webinar, Vishal, last month was this is not necessarily going to work if you're trying to build partnerships right now. You want to build on partnerships that already exist and try to move those forward. Is that right?
Yeah, so you should have a good starting foundation for partnerships. You can certainly build more on top of them as part of your stage 1 planning activities. But there needs to be a core starting group of partners who are involved where you can at least showcase that you have deep engagement that went into even crafting the proposal idea. So.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm assuming that you can add partners along the way, but if I remember correctly, if a stage 1 proposal is awarded, you need to retain that same lead institution or PI in the stage 2 phase. Is that right?
Yeah, ideally that's the case, but we understand sometimes there are circumstances that may dictate that. So on a case-by-case basis, that's something we encourage. At that point, we would ask the PIs to have a discussion with us so we can understand what the circumstances are.
Got it. So we have that planning phase and then the implementation phase, but along the way here, this is one of those programs where awardees are really actively engaged with their peers, in this case via a coordinating entity called Metro Lab Network, which was funded as a way to help to build those longer term communities of practice and amplify the work that awardees are doing here. And so that will be an additional engagement that awardees would have in both of those stages, as we'll see in a moment here. So let's look at the timeline for this, because it is a pretty short window for some of this work. And Vishal, correct my dates here if I'm a little bit off, but submissions for stage 1 are due at the beginning of May, and then you would typically have about a 6-month period where NSF is creating review panels for proposals and reviewing those and making decisions about which they would like to move forward on. And so you would be wanting to think about the beginning of November, roughly, would be your start date if that was awarded. Is that right?
Yeah, slight correction here would be just October 1st, 2024. So our timeline would be May 1st, proposals come in. If teams are moving on to stage 1, they would be notified in the summer that they're expecting to receive an award. And then the award would officially start on October 1st, which would give teams, so it's a 6-month planning stage, which would give teams about 5 months to put their stage 2 proposals together, which are due in February 2025. Yep.
Right. So a little bit shorter than you might see for a research proposal. That's good. I'll go back and change that date after the webinar here before we post the slides. But yeah, then you do have a period of time before the stage 2 submissions are due in February. What are you thinking for the timeline after that? Am I accurate here with sort of late summer for that?
Yeah, I think this is in the right ballpark. It would be July, August start.
Sounds good. So, you need to be thinking about what you're going to, if you're awarded, what you're going to do in that period between October and February to make sure that you have the strongest proposal for the second phase. But if you are awarded in stage 1, there are some activities that NSF is asking you to engage in. There's a kickoff event to meet the other awardees and talk about your projects. And then there's a showcase event at the end of that 6-month period to talk about your concept and other progress along the way. And similarly in stage 2, there's a kickoff event and a showcase event at the end, but also a mid-year workshop along the way, along with other activities. And again, that's what Metro Lab is helping to support there. Anything else, Vishal, that you'd like to say about that timeline that people should be aware of?
My general comment is just, Civic works, the timeline is fairly rapid. It's a very intense grant. So that's one of the reasons why we require, sort of a strong set of initial collaboration and all of that. So as you're putting together your proposals, speaking to this rapid timeline is really important, because that is one of our review criteria is teams need to make a convincing argument and case that in this time frame that you have to both do your planning and then execute your stage 2 pilots if you move on to stage 2. That you can convince the reviewers that you're well set up, both on the research side, on the collaboration side, and on the execution side to undertake this.
Great. And there is significant guidance in the solicitation about what specifically you need to have in your proposal, to address those issues. And so we'll talk really quickly about some of those elements, but again, you want to read that solicitation really closely to make sure that you're covering what NSF is looking for. As I said, today we're focused primarily on track A, which is more climate change and climate resilience focused. I'm assuming that track B will have essentially similar requirements in terms of your proposal, but your content is going to differ there. But what we can see from the guidance here is that they're giving you pretty wide latitude and this covers a pretty huge range of topics and challenges that communities are facing around climate change and response to that, mitigation, and other ways to address that. And so I think there's quite a bit of flexibility in terms of what you can propose into this program, but you want to make sure that you're within those guardrails with what you're proposing. Again, there is some solicitation around each of those tracks in the solicitation itself, and so asking you questions about your concept, about your communities, and the impact of your proposal going forward. So spend some time with that. There also, for both of the stages, is a lot of detail about, what's the overarching vision for your work? What are the partnerships that you're going to have? How do those work? How do they impact the community of interest? So as we've seen in other webinars for NSF solicitations, they give us a lot of detail that's really helpful in understanding what their goals are and how to think about scoping these projects. So that's really helpful to see that. Just really quickly, this program has the standard intellectual merit and broader impacts review criteria that pretty much every proposal at NSF goes through. But there are some additional criteria for this program that you want to be mindful of as well. And so we've talked about some of those already today, but they give you some additional guidance here about what the review panel will be looking at specifically. And so that's helpful to know, but it also means that you need to be responsive to those in your proposal as well. All right, I stuck just a couple of prior awards in here for example for people to check out. I think NSF has made a really interesting set of awards in the past couple of cycles here that address the issues that we have been talking about in this regional community around climate resilience and things like water and agriculture as well. So I encourage folks to check out these in particular, but as I shared earlier, we have a more complete list on our website for people to take a look at. I wanted to, before we get into discussion, just remind folks that this is a monthly webinar series. And so next month, we'll be looking at the NSF career program with a program director responsible for that. So if you have early career faculty and researchers in your network who you think may be interested in that, feel free to share that with them. That'll be in late April. And then in May, we're looking at the SCH program again, as we have in previous years. This is a collaboration with NIH and NSF around data science and biomedical research. So look out for that. We will finalize that date as soon as we can. We also have some links to Civic information here. They hosted a webinar last month that is really helpful to go back and watch if you haven't already. And they have an FAQ document around that program with a lot of additional information as well. Vishal, your team hosts office hours like a lot of folks do at NSF. Is that something that you think will continue for stage 2 proposers to meet with you along the way as well?
Yeah, so because say stage 2 at that point, so for stage 1, since it's an open invite for proposals, we have an office. If you go on the Civic program webpage for NSF, there's a link to register for office hours. But when a proposal moves on to stage 1 and they're preparing the stage 2, they'll have an assigned NSF PO. And then it becomes a bit of a more formal relationship where you can obviously always reach out to your NSF PO, request office hours or a meeting. so our office hour, it won't be an open office hour for anyone who's broadly interested in proposals, but and that's one of the things we do actually do in Civic is as NSF program officers, we are, compared to your standard NSF program, much more directly engaged with our PIs in both receiving updates, but also being available to answer their questions.
That's great. And I know that you have been involved in the Smart and Connected Communities program as well. And there's a due date coming up, I think, next week for that program, but I don't know whether you all have announced that will continue in the future. Can you say anything about that, or is that still too early?
Yeah, it will hopefully continue. We are working on a new solicitation for that we hope to have released later this summer.
Great, thanks. That's very helpful to know that. I put a couple of other programs in here that have just been announced recently. We don't really have time to dig into them today, but I think that they have some similarities to Civic and to SCC in terms of the track A, at least for Civic, looking at climate resilience and natural hazards and things like that. So you may want to have a look at those as well. Let's see, anything else, Vishal, that you think I have missed here that you would like to leave folks with in terms of the basics of the program?
Yeah, no, I think you covered the solicitation and the program goals pretty well. I'll just say from the NSF program team side, register for office hours. If you have questions, reach out to us. We're very responsive. We are open to receiving, one-page summaries of ideas you might be exploring, and we're always happy to share our feedback and comments if the proposal is well scoped for the program.
That's great. Thanks very much. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here, and we'll have a little discussion amongst the folks on the call. But I want to encourage people watching the recording later to follow up with NSF if you're interested in this program, and certainly reach out to us at the Hub if there's something that we can help with, or if you'd like to explore a collaboration with us around this program. So thanks for watching today, and we hope to see you on an upcoming session as well.